At number 10, we've got AQUAMAN. Looking specifically at the redesigns that occurred between the Super Friends era and the 90s look. There's no arguing that the Super Friends look is pretty corny. Some would say that any redesign would have made it better, but what went into making AQUAMAN go from looking like this to looking like this was a decision that not only changed the way we saw Aquaman, but how we knew him as well. Firstly, the original look has him extremely clean looking, like he's been untouched by any battle, which we all know isn't true. And maybe that's just how superheroes were illustrated back then. But the 90s look has him with a harpoon for a hand, no shirt, and this sweet metal chest piece that just makes him look like he's really from the depths of the ocean. His trident also has a major redesign here that gives a more menacing look, like it's really designed to do real damage. And maybe it's not quite part of the costume, but the long hair and beard just seem like the right choice for Aquaman that should have been a thing from day one maybe. But maybe that's just me.
Number 9. The Hulk. Now, this isn't exactly a redesign, and I'll give you that. It's more like a mistake. It's a mistake that led to one of the most iconic characters for Marvel. When the Incredible Hulk first appeared in Marvel Comics, his skin was actually a gray color to keep him indistinguishable from any real-world race, as Stan Lee wanted. But an issue with the colorist's ink actually led to the character coming out looking green, which, I mean, you still get the desired effect. Stan actually ended up liking the green more, and they stuck with it. Good call, Stan the Man. We miss you. Narratively, they even gave a reason for this. At first saying it was prolonged gamma exposure, and later saying that Grey Hulk was an alternate personality version of the Hulk.
At number 8, we have Wolverine. Wolverine's costume has had many changes over the years, but the change from the original yellow look is a significant design choice in the right direction. The thing is, Wolverine looks pretty cool in the original X-Men uniform, but something about this darker look feels like it complements his personality more. The red eyes and the black-gray tones in this outfit are so cool and much more menacing than the classic yellow tiger stripe design, which reflects what X-Force stands for as well. X-Force is a mutant organization put together by Wolverine himself, which applies lethal force if the mission calls for it. It makes sense that Wolverine would be behind something like this because of his inherent Machiavellian outlook on life. This character has lived for so long and through so much that his jadedness has become a staple to who he is. And this redesign just strikes me as being a more accurate portrayal of who Logan is behind the costume.
Number 7. Drax the Destroyer. Thanks to the MCU, it's really hard to think of Drax the Destroyer in any other way. But the MCU's depiction actually borrows from the redesign of Drax from 2004. For this though, Drax here was, well, he had a cape. Capes are cool, no doubt, but I mean, he's just so much better now. Take a look at his design when he was first introduced in the 1970s. Bright green skin with a very comic booky purple costume. It was unique, I'll give you that, but as the rival to the Mad Titan Thanos, it's just nowhere near as imposing and intimidating as it should be. The 2004 design with the pale green skin, red tattoos, and knives evoke the kind of strength and power that comes from the title of the Destroyer.
At number 6, we have The Flash. Looking at the Jay Garrick Golden Age Flash, we can all agree that there was room for improvement. Need I mention the elephant in the room? The silly hat? Okay, I know it has sentimental value, having been his father's World War I helmet, but it just doesn't look very cool. I'm sorry. And he would use it as a weapon by throwing it at bad guys? Anyway, I'm just roasting him now. But when Barry Allen is introduced in 1956 with a new outfit, it seems like it was always meant to be that way. His helmet is replaced with a mask, and the little lightning bolts stick around, which we're happy to see. This costume then basically remains untouched until today, having undergone a few redesigns that didn't really stick, like Kid Flash, which, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. And the John Fox look, which once again, I don't know if it's the right decision for the character. I think the best place the design has found itself is Wally West's costume, which just gives the character a sleek look with lots of integrity.
Number 5. Lobo. Okay, before you jump on me in the comments saying he's a villain, he's more of an anti-hero, okay? When Lobo first appeared in DC Comics, he looked like poo. You were more likely to laugh than to think he had any kind of strength going for him. He had an orange and light purple skin-tight suit for Pete's sake. But when he reappeared with his biker motif, it just made sense. Ripped jeans, leather gloves and a vest. With all his craziness, foul language, weapons, and spiked hair, he needed the rest of him to match. And I think we can all agree his iconic hook was definitely a worthwhile addition. Let's just forget about his newest New 52 redesign though.
No.
At number 4, we have Iron Man. This is one of the biggest redesigns on the list, and for good reason. The old Iron Man is made to look like he's literally wearing a big suit of armor that Tony Stark would like crudely bolt himself into. But over time, with the way that the character's abilities become more advanced, so does the costume. It gets sleeker, more form-fitting, and the colors are toned down a bit, making for a more realistic look, tonally. Something I noticed that's a real eyesore from the original look is the design of the face. The original eye holes and mouth make Iron Man look kind of soulless, like there isn't even a person in the costume. And sometimes that was actually the case, but as Tony Stark's storyline is refined, it seems as though his costume gets less and less blocky as well. And this wasn't only the case for Iron Man, it was arguably the case for every other hero in this list and beyond. With comic books getting more legitimized over time, the depth of all the characters expanded, allowing for cooler, less fantastical designs that you might actually be able to imagine seeing in the real world.
Number 3. Spider-Man. This is an arguable point. Spider-Man's red and blue classic suit is extremely iconic, and I don't think anyone thinks it's bad. The Sam Raimi version of that suit is beautiful. But if you tell me that you dislike the Black Venom symbiote or the black cloth version of this suit, 1, you're a liar, and 2, we can't be friends. This suit was actually designed by a guy called Randy Schueller for a contest Marvel had, and they paid him $220 for it. I'm not sure how that compares to today, inflation-wise, but that $220 bought the Spider-Man's greatest designs outside the original. So great, they even came up with excuses for him to wear it after getting rid of the symbiote version of it.
Okay, at number 2 we have the Batman costume designs from the movies. This is a big one that I think a lot of people agree with. Looking at his original look from the 1966 Batman TV show and the redesigns that took place to get to Christopher Nolan's designs for The Dark Knight, it's clear to anyone that these were major steps in the right direction. Although the original look was probably meant to be a bit goofy, it still could have looked a little less like pajamas and still gotten the feeling across. This is an important transformation to analyze because Batman's original outfit speaks to how seriously comic books were being taken back in the 60s, and that was not very seriously. Honestly, Adam West looks like he pulled a $10 Batman costume off the secondhand shelf at a Halloween store in November. I mean, it barely looks like the cowl fit him. And then when we were blessed with the Dark Knight trilogy back in 2005, we were reminded that these days, Batman is a serious character that deserves a serious look. His suit got darker, more slick, and it finally looked like real armor, which makes sense for the subject matter, which has, over the years, gotten much more gruesome and violent. This was an essential redesign that demonstrates not only how far Batman has come as a character, but how far comic books have come as well. And the massive success of the Nolan trilogy suggests that people were ready for that change.
Number 1. Carol Danvers. The original Carol Danvers Miss Marvel costume is so incredibly different from her redesign as Captain Marvel that you'd be forgiven for thinking they were different people at first. Her Miss Marvel costume was characterized by a black leotard with a big yellow lightning bolt, bare legs, and black boots and gloves. While being an iconic costume, knowing what we know of her backstory and looking at the tone and personality of her character, it didn't seem right for Carol Danvers. When she jumped on the scene with her red and blue pilot-esque Captain Marvel uniform with the shorter hair and the star emblem, she exudes the confidence and strength that her character demands. She even still kept the red sash belt thing, which was probably my favorite part of her costume. This is the suit that inspired her MCU costume with not a single trace or mention of her Miss Marvel suit. It is also the suit that almost everyone has gotten to know her by and has completely revamped and reimagined her character. Number 10. Superman. This version of Superman, the one in the Kingdom Come story by Mark Waid, with art by Alex Ross and Mike Carlin, is set in an alternate reality, Earth 22. Meaning, it isn't a baseline redesign for the character. For that matter, it isn't even a complete overhaul of Superman's costume. The only difference they made to the costume was that Clark's hair had silver streaks to show his age, and the yellow parts of his emblem were changed to black. Otherwise, his costume was a very classic Superman getup. But those two little changes, plus just the overall style of the art itself, did something to this Superman that for me, it just makes me tingle, you know? Number 9. Daredevil. When Daredevil first came on the scene in 1964, his look was different from the one most readers are used to. Instead of his normal color scheme, Daredevil instead had a predominantly yellow suit, with only parts of the suit being the familiar red color. Now, In my humble opinion, the yellow and red suit has its own perks. The overall design of the suit is fairly similar to what would come later, but I will agree that when he showed up in Daredevil #7 with the all-red suit, courtesy of artist Wally Wood, it was an instant stick. It was more in keeping with the darker, brooding, street-level nature of his stories, and it stuck for, well, pretty much the rest of his publication. Hey guys, before we go on, I just want to say a quick little thanks for watching. I also want to say thanks for those of you that leave comments below. I read a lot of them, and you guys always have interesting and helpful things to say, so thanks. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I won't forget to get on with this video. Number 8, the Punisher logo. Okay, I want to talk about this one for a couple of reasons, but let's just say it. Straight up, it's controversial, which always makes for a good discussion. Basically, the classic Punisher logo that has been around since the 70s got a bit of a redesign this year. Punisher has joined the Hand, and in doing so, he has changed his logo to resemble that of an Oni. There's also reason to believe that the symbol may reflect his status within the organization. Unfortunately, there is also a real-world political reason for the change. The logo itself was being adopted by real-world police officers, which is kind of odd considering Punisher is pretty anti-authority, and was even worn by some of those who were involved in the Capitol riots, leading Marvel to make a politically motivated change. Love it or hate it, it is the new look for the character right now. I'm not totally opposed to it, but I know at least a few of you guys out there are a little upset. Let me know what you think below. Number 7, X-Men. I don't know if you know what the original costumes of the X-Men looked like back in the day. Yellow and dark navy blue with yellow and black boots and gloves, except for Beast, who is still vaguely human and didn't wear boots or gloves, and Iceman, who was more like Snowman. The matching costumes definitely show that this was a team, even with their different and unique mutant abilities. There have been many iterations of X-Men costumes since, but for me, when the characters themselves got their own individual costumes in issue 39 of the comic, that's when they really came into their own. The leader of the team, Cyclops, has generally used this look and variations on this look ever since. Mostly. The other members took a bit more time to find iconic looks, namely Angel and Beast, who eventually got his blue fur. Number 6, STARLORD. When STARLORD showed up in Marvel Preview number 4, he was a far cry away from what most fans have come to recognize him as. I think he kinda looks a lot like Owlman from the Watchmen comics, to be honest, but even Peter's personality was much different. The tagline on the comic was, "He stalks the galaxy, one man on a mission of cosmic vengeance." That doesn't sound like the typical wisecracking, sarcastic young hero we know today. Even before Chris Pratt took on the character, Star-Lord was revamped in the 2006 and 2007 Annihilation event, where he formed the Guardians of the Galaxy and got an incredible new costume change, ditching the more cow-like headpiece for a full helmet and the skin-tight outfit for a more loose-fitting uniform. It just gives his character a much more distinctive look, in my opinion. Number 5, Green Lantern. Technically, this point can be argued with. This isn't so much a redesign as a wholly different character, but ask anyone who isn't deeply knowledgeable of the comics who the original Green Lantern is, and you're likely to hear them say Hal Jordan. Now, I'm just guessing here, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Hal Jordan's look, compared to the one of Alan Scott, it's just so much more iconic. Alan Scott sported a black cape with a red collared top, green pants, and a sweet normal looking belt. Sure, he is a different character and not technically an official Green Lantern, but when Hal Jordan came in with a green and black suit with hints of white, it just stuck. Let's just not talk about the movie version, okay? Number 4, Robin, Damian Wayne. We talked about Batman in the last video, so it's only fair we talk about his ward. Specifically, I want to talk about the costume of the newest Robin, and Batman's son, Damian Wayne. If we go back in time and look at the classic original Robin's costume, well, let's just say it kinda goes with the costume of the Caped Crusader at the time. In other words, it's incredibly impractical. I'm also thinking the bare legs wouldn't bode too well in the streets of Gotham, but that's just me. The costume was evolved over the years for sure, but the one that Damian wears when he appears as Robin in 2006, it's just like, ooh, I like it. You know, it's kind of hard to get specific on what makes this one so much better, I'll be honest. But if we just slap up some comparison pics, I mean, it's just better. Number 3, Ultimate's Hawkeye. The Ultimate Universe in Marvel sees a lot of changes to character designs that honestly kind of reflect the MCU looks just a little bit. Overall, I think the outfits are improvements on the originals. I want to give a big nod to Ultimate Thor. But I think the best of the character overhauls would have to be Hawkeye's Ultimate Universe costume. The black vest, the crew cut, and the red glasses make him look even more like a secret agent, which he is. It's also a bit edgier and darker than his 616 counterpart, which most of the Ultimates are considering the comics were aimed at teens. Fight me in the comments, but I definitely prefer this costume. Number 2. Batgirl. Batgirl first appeared in Detective Comics 359, sporting an all-black costume with a yellow bat symbol, belt, boots, and gloves. Personally, I didn't have much of a problem with this look. I thought it was simple, for sure, and quite basic. Just like the other members of the Bat family, Barbara Gordon also got a ton of redesigns through the years. But in 2014, when she got a redesign thanks to artists Cameron Stewart, Brendan Fletcher, and Babs Tarr, the new look, much like Damian's Robin suit, just made more sense. The costume was much more practical. More of a jacket kind of design with a removable cape. The belt was more casual, more like a holster design. Her design had much more personality too this way, which really works for the character herself, who also has a strong personality. Number 1. Nightwing. Nightwing first appeared after leaving the Bat family in Tales of the Teen Titans Volume 1, number 44, and his costume was, honestly, not too bad. It was goofy for sure. Don't get me started on the collar, but with those gold wing designs, it was pretty cool. I'd be a fool though if I didn't say that the blue V costume that debuted in 1996 is the best suit that character has ever worn, if we don't take into account his newest DC Rebirth suit, which is basically just a slightly updated version of this one. The simple blue bird across the chest and into the arms, mixed with the rest of the suit being black, yeah, it's a simpler look, but one that ultimately works better than any other.
Number 10, Loki. Loki has shifted so much in comics. He's technically a different character from that original Loki that first appeared in Venus issue number 6 and again in Journey into Mystery issue number 85. Loki's look originally was pretty silly, especially if we're talking about trying to adapt that look to the big screen and make it look menacing. We do get a version of that sort of original costume in the Loki series when we see an older, bitter, and sadder Loki who actually more reflects that original costume and that original Loki. Loki now appears to look much cooler in the comics and is also much more versatile when it comes to their style. This has also translated to the big screen where Tom Hiddleston's Loki has also gotten more and more dapper and stylish as time has gone on as well. At least that's how I see it. Number 9, Harley Quinn. I know people love the original costume, so this might be like kind of a hot take, but I personally think Harley has had so many amazing costumes and looks over the years that have just improved on what was already, well, good. I'm not saying the original costume was bad, to be clear. So yeah, I'm not saying the original costume that she had was at the level of some of the other ones on our list, Loki, being too much, you know, or too ridiculous, but I am saying that I think her design has only really improved with time. It's a compliment, Harley. Take it. Of course, not all of her looks have been winners in comparison to that original look, but I do think that her current outfit has definitely been one of her best that we've seen so far. And then of course there is her whole Birds of Prey looks, which I loved, and her The Suicide Squad DCEU look, which seems to have been inspired by more modern Harley Quinn comics and video game designs. And to be clear, we're talking about James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad. Not David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Those are two very different looks, are they not? And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about some more cool supervillain redesigns that we love, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, the Joker. The Joker is another character who has come a long way when it comes to his different looks. While his iconic face paint has remained, he's had many different outfits over the years, and many different iconic pieces that we would identify as being part of his costume. Purple and green remain the Joker's colors, but instead of wearing a suit with like a ribbon looking tie that kind of reminds me of something like a child would wear, like a kid in the olden days, or some kind of like floppy bolo tie, he is typically seen more in a trench coat that happens to be purple. Also, if anyone knows what that tie is called, it's like a little bow, but it's like a string. Let me know in the comments. I don't know what that's called. I do not know. The Joker looks less ridiculous and more menacing in modern comics, with the pranks of his earlier days also getting twisted along with his appearance. In more modern comic book tales, Joker has also been particularly terrifying, at one point having removed his face and stapled it back on in Death of the Family in 2011, and at another point sporting his own intimidating Joker-inspired batsuit during Joker War in 2020. Both of these are great looks, but very different looks. Number 7. Toad. Toad has also had a lot of different looks throughout the years, with his original one being the most ridiculous. And also fitting, but also so ridiculous. But I'd say the real cool thing about Toad is that a lot of the time his outfits actually really reflect how he's feeling inside and his evolution as a character. This is why at first it's really no surprise that Toad basically is dressed up as a court jester in his first appearances. At that time that was basically what he was, acting as Magneto's often disappointing goon who wanted nothing more than to please his master, but usually kind of failed at doing so. Toad? As time went on, Toad would come to realize that he didn't actually need to settle for Magneto's mistreatment of him, and that he was no longer really indebted to Magneto. In various depictions of the character, he'd become somewhat more independent, and sometimes a lot more Toad-like in terms of his design. Fox X-Men movies, I'm looking at you. And in terms of his roles, he also even went from being a villain at Magneto's side in the comics to kind of a weird ally of the X-Men when he became the school janitor in Wolverine and the X-Men. Remember when that happened? He also at one point got a flaming tongue. So he's changed a lot. I don't know if I'm as here for the weird green flaming tongue, but I definitely feel like his look is a lot better now than it was before. Also like that he's kinda like a hacker now. I think that's cool. Number 6. The Riddler. The Riddler originally looked Jim Carrey levels of Riddler ridiculous when he first appeared in Detective Comics issue 140. And that's not a slight to Jim Carrey, by the way. I still love that version of the Riddler. Just also a side note, when I call things ridiculous or weird, it's not necessarily an insult coming from me. And while I do have respect for the Riddler's original question mark suit, I don't think it's necessary for him to be covered in question marks so that we know he's the Riddler. He likes riddles. We get it. Riddler has had a ton of redesigns since that first appearance, with a good number of his modern takes being much improved on in comparison. Okay, so not all of the modern takes on the Riddler have been great. See Riddler with his hair shaved into a question mark shaped green mohawk. That was a weird time, but overall I think we can say we've seen a marked improvement. I also do love the recent redesign with Paul Dano playing the Riddler in the Batman film. I feel like this design for the character was definitely one of the most terrifying looks for him yet, and also fit really well with his origin and his backstory, and just with the overall tone of that film, which takes inspiration from the comics but very much grounds the character of the Riddler in reality, giving him more power as well in the process. I think. Like when you make it just not about like silly riddles and you make it about like what is the Riddler and why are there riddles and what is this really about? I mean, it's a powerful character. Number 5. Cheetah. I mean, the Cheetah outfit has changed a lot since her first appearance, and so has the character. The first Cheetah villain we were ever introduced to in the pages of 1943's Wonder Woman issue number 6 is no longer the Cheetah we have in comics. Literally. Much has changed about the character, including her identity, her origin, and her overall look and power set. The original Cheetah was Priscilla Rich, a jealous debutante who dressed up in a skin-tight cheetah onesie. It's a look, I gotta say. Now we have Barbara Minerva as the main cheetah, who instead of dressing up actually has a humanoid cheetah form, having been transformed basically by a god. Very different looks and takes on this character, but I'd definitely say that Minerva's is better overall. Sorry Priscilla, it's just cooler. Like, I mean, then you get to actually kind of fight like a cheetah lady, as opposed to just a lady in a cheetah costume. Number 4. Crime Syndicate. The Crime Syndicate have always been cool, but over the years their looks have gotten a lot more detailed, badass, and in some cases, a lot hotter. I'm here for the sexy Crime Syndicate, I must say. I'm feeling it. The Crime Syndicate are actually one of the earliest villain teams to take on the Justice League, making their first appearance in 1964 in Justice League of America issue number 29. At least the earlier continuity version of that team, that is. Because this is DC we're talking about here, so you know, now we're on Prime Earth and that was before that, but anyways. Back then their outfits were less sleek and more blocky, such was the time. They were also a lot less sexy back then overall as a team, and had a lot less independent flair, with their looks being just a little bit more rough and basically similar adaptations of the team members that they were mirroring. I mean, Owlman literally has Batman's look from like the neck down almost exactly, with only the Stark owl on his head setting him apart. It's a look. Number 3, Kang the Conqueror. Okay, so Kang still looks pretty crazy, even in the comics, but he's come a long way from that wild purple and green eyesore when it comes to his cinematic appearance at least. We saw our first, likely of many, Kangs in the Disney Plus streaming series Loki. Here Kang was played by the amazing Jonathan Majors, and instead of sporting his very blue face and purple helmet, he was dressed simply in a nice purple robe with green tunic, pants, and sandals underneath. A nice nod to the original design while still providing its own unique take on his look, and a take that is quite a bit more sensible and stylish. Still, an air of flamboyance in how he's dressed, but not so over the top that it undermines how intense, inevitable, and intimidating He Who Remains, aka an alternate Kang, appears to be here. Number 2, Lex Luthor. Lex looks a lot cooler and a lot more dapper in modern comics than his original appearance. Remember when he used to wear a purple suit with green pants? What is it with villains in purple and green? Especially over at DC. What's going on over there? It's kind of a very shocking combo of colors, especially for someone like Lex. Although I will admit, put it into a mech type suit, gloss it up a bit, and it works a little better for me. I do like it. Lex used to wear this purple suit with straps crossed over it, and a very Dracula-esque high collar with bright green pants and purple boots. Fortunately, he now more keeps to suit and tie looks, looking a lot more polished and refined, and occasionally mixes in some badass mechanical armor, which makes him look a lot more intimidating than that collar ever did. Number 1, Killmonger. Talk about villains who have seen an upgrade. In Jungle Action issue number 6, we got our first look at Killmonger. I don't even think you'd recognize him today if your main experience with this character came from the Marvel Cinematic Universe film Black Panther and Michael B. Jordan's portrayal of him. The original look for Killmonger involved a lot of spikes, as opposed to a lot of horrifying scars. He didn't initially mark himself for his kills, instead he was just really pointy. He also wore white pants and a red sash, with no shirt initially. We've come a long way since then, with Killmonger having even been to space and back, where he ruled over the Wakandan space empire. And thankfully his look has changed quite a lot since then. I'm partial to his symbiote look personally, still a little spiky, but you know, it doesn't overdo it. Nothing wrong with a little bit of spikes, you just don't want to have too many.